252.
Going with the controversial covers, how did you feel? Or even were you collecting comics when you saw? Because I do remember the Tony Stark, the demon in the bottle.
Yes.
And that was the whole. And you got to say that was the image that stayed with me forever because when you go now we're going into the future world, which is our past now. But when they cast Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, I was like, the guy who's been perfect. This is the guy who's been in and out of drug rehab. I'm like, if anybody can pull off Tony Stark, and god damn it, now Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark as much as Tony Stark is now Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Like
the rebirth and all that.
I was collecting Iron Man when they did Demon in the Bottle. I had the issues.
Yeah,
I was too young for that. I thought the portions they focused on Tony Stark's alcoholism went right over my head. I could care less.
Right.
And I just want to see James Rhodey. I said, okay, James Rhodey's the new Iron Man. Let him do it. I don't want to see Tony Stark walking the street in his baggy clothes, trying to get, I think for kids, it wasn't done for kids. It was done for the more mature readers.
Now, was this one of those ones where they didn't have a comics code approve on it?
This was
I don't remember.
So I think this was definitely in the.
Well, there were some where they wouldn't have the seal on it, right? Weren't there a few where they would not put the seal on it?
They didn't put the seal on the Spider-Man drug issue.
Yes, I remember that.
That was 2 issues, and they intentionally did not put the seal on and told the CCA that they were not going to.
Yeah. Why was that? Did they have a...
the Comics Code Authority prohibits any use of drugs in any way.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about using it. Just they did a comic in the shortly after CCA came out. It's a DC comic. They had to change the name. This guy was bringing shipments of drugs in, and they had to change it to contraband or something. Even in boxes coming off a ship was not allowed.
Wow.
Yeah. CCA was pretty
serious.
bad.
Protecting us from
the code is on the Demon in a Bottle cover, though. Pop that up. It's definitely missing from those Spider-Man. Was it missing from the, well, we'll get to that one later, but there's one in this list that it might be missing from the same reason that with the drug thing.
I tell you what, all this makes me want is some Winston bourbon. That looks
It's oh yeah, that's nice drawing there, right?
I know, that's really nice.
See, that was realistic without being photorealistic like they try now.
I love the 5 o'clock shadow on
you.
it.
Who did that cover?
Cover artist Bob Layton.
Yes.
Damn, there it is.
And that's what it says right there, Bob Layton. Yeah.
Look at you. How you feel?
Winning the internet. How big is that coat that he's wearing over his armor? That's got to be huge.
It's the Hulk's jacket. Yeah.
I'm telling you that launched like a 5-issue string of him wandering the streets and getting trashed, and it didn't have an impact on me. I thought it was just a waste of space in an Iron Man book, and I wanted to get back to James Rhodey saving the
kicking
world.
Butt.
Well, how about if that didn't have the impact on you, what about the Green Lantern Green Arrow issue number 85, where Green Arrow is all distressed because he can't believe my ward,
Speedy.
He's on the horse.
His name was Speedy. You had to figure there was some drugs there.
But he used heroin. He had to slow down.
He had to slow it down. I always thought it was interesting to name a character Speedy wasn't fast. And you go Kid Flash. Now, this is this actually was in the 70s, right?
71.
71? Was that early?
Damn.
Well, it's not too long after the Spidey issues.
Yeah, that was before I was reading comics. I
Now,
was still reading hot stuff.
If I can remember correctly, there was the first issue or the first cover. I think there was a cover that came out where they actually showed the needle penetrating the skin, and then when they re-released the issue, it was just that.
Did they cut it off, or did they?
I remember there was there was something about it that, because at first it was like they showed
the
needle.
Maybe that's inside the issue. I think there was that the more graphic shot, and then they pulled for the cover to make it less,
They'll like it less.
The actual scene inside the book was like, uh-oh, look what he's doing. But on the cover, they're like, I think he's about to do this.
Sweet.
Back when they used to use the covers to actually tell you what was in the books instead of just being a poster. Like,
oh. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those were the days.
Back before they had 5 variants of every cover.
Yeah.
I got to get them all.
But still, I mean...
This did not make me want to do Smack because
well,
Speedy
no,
looks
but
like
it did. Well, what it did was really it was trying to put like being what I'm trying to say socially conscious back. They were trying to make the books, even though they were targeted for kids.
Right.
It's like the drug dealers were also targeting kids. So if you want to combat that,
you got to get into what the kids are into.
Yeah,
I got
and
you.
so they were throwing it out there, and they were just trying to, and it was a great story because when you're talking about, it's like superheroes can, rescue from aliens coming to destroy the world, but how hard is it for a superhero to save you from yourself?
Yeah. That's good.
That whole like late 60s, early 70s was like a socially conscious period where they tried to do a lot of that. All the comic writers were trying to get more serious and connect more with the youth and all that stuff. And as people were going off to war and everything.
Right.
So it's like
you got to think about what was going on. What was really going on?
Crime rate in New York City. They all lived in New York, and I saw a great documentary about Comics Code Authority and why they dumped it. And they were talking about, we didn't know if we were going to get home on the subway without getting stabbed or shot. He said, that's why we made the Punisher. That's why we made all these characters that rose out of the 70s very dark. That's why Batman became the Dark Knight instead of the campy 60s television show. It's everybody got darker.
Yeah, real quick, going back to the review, there's a scene where they do the bam in the Batman, and I thought it was cute. That's it. I'm not gonna say nothing.
All right. Well, I think this is a perfect segue into Superman number 75.
Yeah.
So I do recall this. Is that the Doomsday issue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was bagged, had an armband in it.
Yeah.
It had just the S kind of drooling on the cover.
Yeah.
And you had to buy 2 of them if you wanted to read it.
Yeah. I remember that because that's when, I believe it's a Sephora now, but back in the day, it used to be Comics and Comics.
Yeah.
And I remember that issue on the counter in.
Was it in its own?
It was in its own.
In white bags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember there were people, the Superman fans were in there. They were trying to get it. At that time, I was a devout Marvel.
Yeah. Totally anti-DC. I would call you that.
I was anti-DC.
Listen out, bud.
I was like,
you gotta get both sides.
Man, I was like,
do a lot of good work.
I was like, Superman is dead. I was like, good, because he deserves it.
Now, I know John, a.k.a. Johnny Blaze, was always a fan of DC Comics. Definitely Frank. A lot of your DC-dom came from your dad's collection, though? Or did you discover DC on your own?
No, he had all DC stuff and was a non-Marvel guy, which actually is somewhat disappointing in retrospect because his main comic collecting years were 1964 and 65. So if he was into Marvel, he would have had like 1 through 10 of Spider-Man and Avengers and all the good stuff.
Fantastic.
But I got a lot of like the beginning of the campy Batman and all the Superman wackiness that was going on there, and then when it was time for me to buy comics, it was always steered towards the DC stuff more than the Marvel for sure. Until I got to about maybe 8 or 9.
Yeah,
it's almost like when your parents push that your religion on you, and then you decide later if you're going to stay in religion. I think I might want to be Pentecostal.
Yeah,
I got all the Marvel stuff from the cartoons. They had the Spider-Man cartoon, which I loved. There was the Thing was on with Fred and Barney for some reason.
Hulk.
And there was when Captain America throws his mighty shield, all that stuff.
Batman Tarzan Adventure Hour.
Yeah.
Saturday morning.
Sometimes featuring the Lone Ranger for no reason.
I remember that.
Why is the Lone Ranger in this mix? Different.
I will say one thing. Just I do watch a lot of documentaries, on Netflix and whatnot.
Oh, of course.
One of the ones about the death of Superman, they actually had a DC employee say, it was a woman, I got to get her name and watch it. He said, we never intended to kill him. He wasn't going to stay dead. Come on, he's Superman. You can't kill Superman.
Yeah.
It was just a farce to sell comics.
Yeah, it was kind of the death of comic collecting too, because that's when the massive amount of speculators peaked, and everything started. All those books from around then are worth about 10 cents a pound now.
Yeah. Oh man, all that same shit happened around the same time where baseball cards flooded the market.
Yeah.
Comics flooded the market. The death of fill in the blank. Just
so
you
remember
much speculation.
X-Men #1, the most published comic, something like 6 million copies exist.
How many copies?
Yeah, they did the scam.
They did like 5 or 6 million copies.
It's
so people were buying 20 copies of it, putting them in plastic, thinking it's to be worth a fortune. It's one of the most common comics on the market.
So is my platinum cover not worth anything?
I don't know about the variants, but
it's worth about $5.
It did.
That was a good read too. I loved that.
I love reading those.
Excellent.
I love that one because it was when all the covers were, when you put them all together, they made a poster with Magneto like this, and it was so
it was a good series. I remember reading it. It was very good.
Yeah.
The only problem is Marvel didn't like paying people.
Yeah.
And they would have, and that was during the time if Marvel and DC would have actually appreciated the talent the way they were supposed to and not went so corporate, you wouldn't have had all the Mavericks, or you wouldn't have all the talent break off and have a Maverick, which ended up pulling some of the sales and stuff. All the you get all the talent.
Mm-hmm. So Marvel and DC, we thank you for not paying your people.
Well, Marvel was getting more corporate too. It's when they start selling the rights to these characters to other companies for merchandising or movies, there's restrictions placed on the artists. No, Spider-Man can't come out or shoot speed because the people who sell Spider-Man action figures, we got in our contract that you're going to produce a Spider-Man comic this way.
You know what? And that's the good and the bad and the ugly of it, because for it to grow and for it to finally, and for us to get all these movies and stuff that we're all enjoying now, they had to go through all that. And again, if someone had a crystal ball, they probably wouldn't have sold off the rights or all it, because now they got all these amazing characters. Now that the MCU is doing all this stuff, now they since they don't have the X-Men, they have to make the Inhumans the X-Men. And from what I understand, that shit ain't working out.
Oh,
how much you that Marvel had to pay Sony to allow Spider-Man to be in Civil War? They probably paid through the nose.
I don't think that.
I think they probably did it for
Sony
a high five.
I understand
movie
but
rights
I
Spider-Man.
think Sony said. I think Sony.
I'll let you borrow him for it.
Look, they knew what they could see the writing on the wall. They see what the MCU was doing, so I think it was a nice deal for both parties.
Both parties, yeah, exactly.
Well, they say kick us off in the right direction. They put your expertise to use because we don't have any idea what we're doing with these movies. So they probably gave them just a big chunk of the back end and didn't have to really pay much up front at all. But now going forward, it's going to be, well, you're never doing that again for anything less than 10 times the amount, probably. Corporate deals.
And that's what's going to ruin it. Corporate capitalism, greed, and all that.
That's why they left DC and went to Marvel anyway in the first place. And, and Marvel does the same thing. They leave and they go to Valiant and Image.
It's all a revolving door of the same shit.
If you don't give the artist freedom, they're not going to produce a good comic.
Hey, you know what? Freedom isn't free. And if you think it's free, then you must be dumb. That's why they call it freedom.
Thank you, Cat.
Yeah, right.
All right. So moving on. So on our top 5 list, we're going up to the number 2 most controversial comic.
Yes.
And that is Captain America number 1. That is Captain America giving it the old right cross to old Adolf Hitler, which they so brilliantly did in Captain America First Avenger. Like, going back to MCU, just pulling on the wealth of content and stuff that they have and putting it in the movies. Where, yeah, actually, I'm not even going to say it.
Is this one really controversial at this point? I mean, it's almost like a meme now because it's like, that's like people like Richard Spencer out there. This is like a patriotic image above all at this point.
I'm saying I put this on the list because of current events, which certain people in certain positions of power feel like Nazis aren't the bad guys. So here's clearly Captain America. Captain America is punching out the leader of the Nazis, so they have to be bad. There's not good people in that crowd with Hitler. They're all bad. You do have to punch out Nazis.
What if your little frog?
It's Pepe's become kind of a symbol.
You hear that, kid? Punch Nazis.
You know what? I don't think we can fully appreciate this cover because that came out right during the war.
Yes.
There were a lot of people dying over there for relatives, and this had a real, pro-American message. You had Captain America fighting Nazis, Submariner, and the Human Torch fighting the Japanese. We were actually at war with them, and I think we can't appreciate it the same way they did. Because
I can see that
we're so many years apart, and there is no active enemy.
Do your part. Buy this comic.
You'd have to think about like in '91 if they released a comic with Captain America punching Saddam Hussein in the face. It'd been about the same idea. Like,
Yes, very true.
I'm sure that would have sold some copies.
Part of the proceeds go to the war effort. Here's my nickel, sir.
Okay, so I want to say at this time right now, before we go and say what our number one most controversial, I want to hit up a couple of our honorable mentions.
Please do.
I'll just shoot through the list real quick, and then we can go ahead and talk about anyone that you guys want to talk about.
All right, just mention it, and I bet Frank can pull the cover in his head.
So this one here, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say this one is Life with Archie. With Betty, Veronica, you got Archie on the ground with an apparent
GSW
right to the belly.
Yeah,
bleeding out.
Yeah, ever controversial Archie covers, but Life with Archie was a series like that, though. They were always, it was like the serious dark side of the Archie universe, where something bad was always happening. Betty was being kidnapped, or Veronica was being tied up, or Archie was being shot in the guts, which kind of ties into the end of Riverdale, actually.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.
It's been like 5 months. It's on DVD. Spoilers are free.
There's so much stuff out there.
There's so much stuff. I had to wait. We got Astonishing X-Men number 51.
Pull that up.
Where
I'm not familiar with that.
This is the one where Iceman comes out of the closet and gets married.
Awesome. Look at that. I love it.
He got married? I didn't even know about that.
Neither did I.
Who did he get married to? Astonishing X-Men what? 51?
Astonishing
He
X-Men
married
number
Pyro in a astonishing twist.
Actually, it looks more like Sunspot. But and then we have Batgirl number 41, the variant cover.
Oh yes.
Is that the Killing Joke one?
Yeah, he's got the Killing Joke fit on. Yeah.
That wouldn't have been a big deal if people didn't make a big deal out of it. They only probably printed like 1,000 copies of it.
Well, yeah, but
it was a serious variant, and then people were like, he's trying to do bad things. Like, it's the Joker. Maybe he does bad things.
The Joker, he does bad things.
Well, you take a homicidal sociopath. Yeah, sometimes they can surprise you and do something bad.
Yeah. No, surprise. The Joker.
And then, John, you got a couple of things that you wanted to...
I brought some pre-Comics Code Authority comics. This is one of the issues they were addressing. I don't know.
We can hold that up to the...
The woman is scantily clad. She's buxom and she is in distress. That was... these were the kind of covers that they were so shocked about. So that's from 1942. No, 46. This is 1942 right here. This woman's even a little more risque as the way she's dressed. You've got a very stereotypical Japanese soldier being punched with the. He's being pistol whipped, actually.
Yeah,
That could almost be described as racist.
Yeah, because he looks actually.
They got the big teeth that they used to put on all the Asians back then. Yeah,
and he looks
that's wings number 26.
Eyes slanted in a way that is impossible.
But imagine you would not see anyone pistol whipping someone on the cover of a comic nowadays. Even though,
especially with that big ass smile on his face as he's pistol whipping.
But those are
well, now it's flipped back around. Now they can do whatever they want since there's no code and no rules. Since mostly there's no children involved in this process anymore.
Right.
When in our day of major purchasing, it was very, very restricted.
Comics are as intended now for adults, not kids.
Well, now you can buy Freddy, I was going to say Friday the 13th, good deal. Freddy Krueger and Friday the 13th comics where it's like an axe splitting someone's face in graphic detail on the cover. You're like, oh, no problem, Yeah. But, they couldn't even talk about that stuff in ours. Like, oh.
Not even a little bit.
The other thing on the Swings covers, the woman's bleeding. That was a big issue. Wow. You couldn't hit a woman. You could show the fist coming, and then the woman recoiling, but she could not bleed. That was a big deal with the comics code. Police and government could not be shown as corrupt.
Say that again?
Police and government officials could not be portrayed as being corrupt under the Comics Code Authority.
That would have wrecked most of Batman for years.
They had
no bad
tons of rules. Right. And most of the rules, surprisingly enough, were designed to shut down EC Comics that made Vault of Horror and Tales from the Crypt. That's why they said no werewolves, no vampires, no ghouls, no undead, no eating human flesh. This was all the target EC.
It's turning our kids gay.
Well, that's how we got Mad Magazine. They said, well, you can't publish any of the things you normally publish. We have to lean in this direction, basically. And,
magazine-sized comics were all exempt from the Comics Code Authority. That's what gave us the Great Savage Sword of Conan.
Yes.
Vampirella. Eerie and creepy. When you come up with these top 10 lists, I challenge one guy. I say, come up with a top 10 list of comics in the 80s that did well that did not get remade in the 2000s. It's like they did the North Star coming out issue in the early 90s, and this is much later. It showed, I remember I had it, showed just his face, and he was yelling, and his eyes were closed. And all you could see was his face. And, and it was...
I thought that came out a lot earlier than that.
I think it was was it 90 or 91 that came out?
Yeah, I think it was about 90 or 91. That's when he came out and revealed that he was gay. But this was when he got married. So yeah, that was right around the time they made Iceman gay too. So it's like, okay. I guess it didn't make much sense for Iceman though, being given his backstory. But North Star, he was already there. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Plus nobody cared about him. So
yeah,
easy character to.
I mean, they could have gone with Wolverine. I mean, how funny would that have been?
Oh yeah,
pissed off a ton of people. But for no reason, what if Wolverine wanted to be gay?
These claws aren't the only things going inside your bub.
He can do what he wants.
Let's go ahead and now jump into surprise, our number one most controversial comic book cover comes from Superman's girlfriend. Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane, number 106.
This, first of all,
hold on.
Hold on. I gotta. They made 105 of these.
That was a really good series. That one and Jimmy Olsen were surprisingly good series. They both, you think, what's this about? And it really was about all the scheming bullshit she was doing to try to entrap Superman. But she'd always get captured by someone and have to go through, maneuvers to get out.
That's a long title.
This is, and please somebody give me the date. I want to say it was like 1968. It could have been.
This looks like 70s fashion.
That's probably 71, 70, somewhere around there, early 70s.
I like the fishnets though, and look at this. Her going into the chamber, you can tell she goes in as a thin, skinny white girl and comes out as a thick, buxom black chick. She's like, we got to draw some ass on her.
Yeah, because her titties got bigger,
they got fuller,
and her thighs got fuller, and she got some curves.
She is a thoroughbred.
already, and then how about the fact that Superman didn't want nothing to do with it?
Yeah,
That was Superman. He was like, Lois, you're black. I'm not fucking with you.
Well, yeah. Read the issue. And you're like, what? Superman. You know, that was November 1970.
1970. Well, I would have to say the one thing that you do get out of this issue, I mean, if you don't even read the issue in itself, but just going by judging the book by the cover,
that's what we do here.
you see in the first part, you see Superman looking at Lois lovingly, and then when she comes out as black, he's far away, looking back over his shoulder.
This is what he's doing is he's looking at her ass. He's like, man, I can't handle that. I gotta go in this machine and come out as Superfly because I cannot handle all that ass in my current form.
And then Lois had to be a black woman for a day,
right?
And it was too much. And it was.
She only did 18 hours, and she was like, "Oh, this is bullshit."
I think she did the full 24.
She did it. At
least they quote her saying, "I'm gonna be 24 hours as a black woman." I can't remember if she went the full 24 hours.
Well, they did it was sort of like that All in the Family episode where Archie gets the blood from the black guy and has the panic. It was kind of that same thing. Lois Lane, while she was in disguise as a black woman, thoroughly disguised in the DC universe where glasses disguise Superman, she was, she gave blood to some guy who was like militant about not wanting it from no white woman. And then when he woke up and she had turned back to white, shock and chaos ensued. But then he decided that it was better to be alive than to be prejudiced. That was the message of the day.
Yeah, awesome.
It was deep.
Knowing is half the
just
battle.
blowing right past the fact that they spray painted Lois black for no reason.
Pretty much.
Blackface.
Plus, that was probably around the same time as the Black Like Me thing. The original one before Eddie Perry did it later.
It was about the same time when Green Arrow, through the revelation on Green Lantern, that he was prejudiced. They did that so well, and they did this one so badly.
Yeah.
You compare the two. I'll let you borrow it. It's a trade paperback I got of those old Neil Adams, Green Arrow, Green Lantern. First thing he does, he says, you're willing to protect green men, blue men. So right in front of you in the city you live in, there black men were being attacked. Never lift a finger. Ooh. And Green Arrow takes him out. They go as themselves, not as superheroes, to go talk to the community and find out what's going on.
So wait, so you're saying Green Lantern didn't protect black people?
Was the message of that. Don't tell me I didn't write it.
I'm not trying to.
He didn't specifically ignore them and be like, "I'm not helping you."
I'm just saying, because I already
not as
don't
concerned.
Like Green Lantern. I hated the movie. So don't give me
another reason to hate him.
To hate him.
That was done really well.
And another reason to like the Arrow, because I love the Arrow, even though the last couple seasons wasn't that good, but I'm still sticking with them.
Yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Maybe
one more reason to love them.
But it was done well. It kind of opened his eyes. He didn't realize what was going on right in front of his face when he's going out in the cosmos and doing all this.
Right. He
finally recognized there was something wrong here and now, and Green Arrow is the one who brought it to his attention. And it was done around the same time as this. This was an abortion, and that one was a great classic issue.
That one was a nice baby birth.
That was.
I would have to say, definitely, keeping with just the theme of the show. Excuse me. That this one again, the only reason why it qualifies as let's say our number one is because it was the whole thing of how hard it is just being in another walking a mile in another man's shoes, even if it's one day. And it was a hard thing to see because at the time, Lois Lane, because she's been a character at this point, in the 70s, that was 30 years of Lois Lane, right?
40
years of Lois Lane. As the plucky reporter,
She looks good for being 70-something.
There you go.
I mean, when you think about all the women who have played Lois Lane over the years, off the top of my head, I could think of several. Erica Durance, Margot Kidder. Who else?
Terry Hatcher.
Terry Hatcher.
Terry Hatcher. That was the girl, whoever the lady was who played her in the black and white TV series. Don't know her name.
Noelle O'Neill.
Ooh, wow.
There you go.
You know,
Deep.
Now, did you see the thing today with the release from the South Park game that's coming up, where they showed how their difficulty level works? You know, it kind of ties into this. If it's got like easy, normal, difficult, and super hard, and as you select from normal to hard, your skin color darkens. So if you select super difficult, you're black. And Cartman's like, it's okay. It won't make combat any more difficult. It just affects every other thing in your entire life.
Wow. South Park guys, once again, knocking it out of the park, even with something like that. That is hilarious. Jesus.
So like there's people still trying to make the same point. It's just there's better ways to do it than that particular Superman comic did.
Yeah.
It was a different time.
It was a different time.
It was,
That's the other
yeah.
thing.
We're talking about, 45 years ago or something at this point.
Yeah.
I believe
But hey,
7.
Swing and miss. Nowadays, this would be deemed the most racist thing ever. But it's like, you know what? When people try and they're trying to make at least say something, it's like, hey, all right, give them a pass. It's not racist. Everything isn't racist, okay?
Is it more or less racist than the movie Soul Man from '86?
Racist.
If Radon Chong was not in that movie,
and again, she's only half black.
Yeah, that's enough.
Yeah, I'm surprised James Earl Jones was in that movie.
Oh yeah,
remember he was a teacher.
Not racist.
That movie.
Wow. And with that,
It cannot be racist, Luke.
And I can't say for a fact because I don't know who wrote and drew it, but I bet they were both white men.
well,
Yeah. Lois Lane 106.
yeah.
There was nobody but white men working in the industry at that time.
Yeah. It's like,
A foregone conclusion.
Well, hopefully on next week's episode, maybe we'll find out who the Jackie Robinson of comics is. Who broke the color barrier? I want to find that out.
Oh
Yeah.
wow, that is something.
Let's see. I can probably figure that out without too much, But I don't know. It depends on what level you consider breaking through. Just being, an artist or a writer, or does that have to be creator? I say, it's probably
all of the above. I mean,
it probably happened in the '60s, right, the very late, around this same period we're talking about here.
And it's probably someone's name that I
when
know.
When did Owsley start?
Didn't know they were black.
Jim Owsley, who is now Christopher Priest. Somewhere around, it was probably like the early '70s. I had to look it up. I'm sure we can figure this out.
Yeah, right. See,
Next
here
episode, we have a topic.
There we go.
Well, actually,
All right.
Ralphie likes pitching these ideas and not doing any follow-up.
That's what I
on
do.
it.
I'm an idea guy. All right.
But you don't do any follow-up.
I know. I'm an idea guy.
For Frank G, Ralphie D, and Johnny Blaze, I am Cool Water Kurt saying in the immortal words of Gordon Shupway, good night, Mrs. Valerie, wherever you are.
Ha! Willie!
That's what I see whenever I see a Venus.
Adonis, pull yourself together.